There are moments in life, moments when the ground shakes beneath your feet, when the plans you held so tightly crumble like dust in your hands. Moments when you look around and say, Lord, what am I supposed to do now? But hear me today. Faith doesn't shine when everything is perfect. Faith gets its power when everything is falling apart, because it's in the breaking that God reveals the building. It's in the storm that you discover the strength He already placed inside you. And if you walked into this moment feeling empty, weary, or torn at the seams, oh, you are standing in the perfect position for a breakthrough. Today we're going to talk about the power of faith when everything falls apart. And I believe somebody in this room is about to feel the pieces come together in ways only God can orchestrate. When life is smooth, when the sun is shining, when money's flowing, when relationships are calm, when your body feels strong, faith is easy. Anybody can believe when nothing is shaking. But the breaking point, that's a whole different arena. That's the place where the light dims, the noise fades, and you find yourself face to face with what you truly believe. The breaking point exposes what comfort never will. It strips away the props, the routines, the little illusions of control we cling to. And in that raw, vulnerable place, faith is no longer a pretty word. It becomes survival, breath, anchor, lifeline. See, we don't really discover the depth of our faith until the moment we feel cracked open. It's when the job slips out of your hands, when the relationship you prayed for falls apart anyway, when the diagnosis catches you off guard, when the friend you trusted walks away, when the silence of God feels heavier than the storm itself. That's where faith steps onto the stage, not as a whisper, but as a force, a presence, a steadying hand in the dark. The breaking point has a way of pushing us past the surface. It demands honesty. It forces the question, do I truly believe God is with me, even here, even now, even in this, when everything is collapsing? Faith isn't about pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about trusting that the hurt doesn't have the final say. Faith doesn't deny the reality of pain. It declares that pain will not define the outcome. There's something holy about the breaking. Not comfortable, not pretty, but holy. Because that's where God does some of His best work. Not when we're put together, but when we're undone. The breaking point shakes loose the parts of us that were never built to last. It exposes the lies we agreed to, the fears we never confronted, and the limits we put on ourselves and on God. And once those pieces fall away, faith begins to rise, not as theory, but as power. Some people try to measure their faith by how much they can avoid hardship. But real faith, it shows up in the fire. It shows up in the midnight hour. It shows up when you're out of answers, but still holding on to a promise. It's easy to think that the breaking point is where everything ends, but what if that's the exact moment God has been waiting for? A moment where He can show you that your strength was never just your own. A moment where you discover resilience you didn't know you carried. A moment where your spirit learns to stand even while your world is falling. There's a strange, almost upside-down truth about how God works. He doesn't always build on the clean, neat, perfectly organized pieces of our lives. More often, He builds on the rubble, on the ruins, on the moments when everything you were holding together finally slips through your fingers. It feels unfair at first. Like, why would a God who loves me allow something to fall apart? But over and over again, you start to see a pattern. God will let certain structures collapse because He knows they weren't strong enough to support where He's taking you. What feels like demolition is often preparation. Sometimes we cling to things because they're familiar, not because they're good for us. We hold on to old mindsets, old relationships, old fears, old plans that never actually fit who we're becoming. We don't let go until life forces our hand. Then suddenly, boom, the thing snaps. The relationship ends, the opportunity dries up, the dream cracks under the weight of reality. And while we're sitting in the dust of disappointment, God quietly gets to work on the foundation. Not the old one, a new one, a deeper one, a stronger one. God isn't just a repairman, He's a builder. He's not trying to patch up the shaky structure you were barely keeping upright. He's trying to build something that can actually last, something that aligns with your purpose, something that can hold the weight of the blessing he wants to give you. But construction always begins with clearing the site. And clearing the site feels like loss, like downfall, like failure. We see the collapse as a catastrophe, but God sees it as step one. Think about how many times you've learned the most after something fell apart. You learn who you are when the mask is off. You learn who your real friends are when the fake ones disappear. You learn what you truly value when the lesser things break away. You learn what God sounds like when all the distractions are finally silenced. There's revelation in the ruins if you're willing to look closely. And here's the wild part. Sometimes the very thing that breaks is the thing you prayed for. Sometimes it's the relationship you swore was the one. Sometimes it's the business you thought would be your legacy. Sometimes it's the plan you created with so much confidence. And you look at God like, why would you let this fall apart? But God sees where that path ends, and he sees what you can't. He knows when something you love won't carry you into the future he designed. He knows when a good thing is blocking a God thing. When the dust settles, you start to notice the outlines of a new blueprint, a sturdier identity, a clearer purpose, a deeper humility, a sharper vision. And little by little, the collapse that once felt like the end starts to look like the beginning. That's the mystery of how God works. He uses the very thing that broke you as the material to build you. Your tears become mortar. Your resilience becomes brick. Your faith becomes scaffolding. And before long, you're standing inside a life you couldn't have built on your own, whispering to yourself, if that thing hadn't fallen apart, I never would have grown into this. Peace is one of those things everybody says they want. But most folks only try to grab hold of it after the storm has passed, after the bills are paid, after the relationship is fixed, after the stress disappears, after life stops throwing punches. But real peace, the kind that actually transforms you, isn't something that waits until the sky clears. Real peace is a decision you make while the thunder is still rumbling, while the waves are still rising, while your heart is still shaking. It's a before choice, not an after reward. When everything around you is loud and chaotic, peace looks almost unreasonable, like you're choosing calm in a moment that doesn't deserve calm. But that's exactly why it's powerful. Choosing peace before the storm ends is a declaration of trust. It says, I don't need the situation to change for me to believe it's going to be okay. It says, I'm anchored in something deeper than whatever is threatening me. It says, I can breathe even here. It's not about ignoring reality. It's about refusing to let reality intimidate your spirit. There's a strength that rises in you when you decide to settle your soul before the world settles itself. Most of the battles we fight aren't on the outside. They're in the mind. The storm outside is rarely as destructive as the storm inside. Anxiety builds its own weather system. Fear brings its own lightning. But peace is the stabilizer. Peace is the thing that tells your thoughts to quiet down, your emotions to take a seat, and your spirit to remember who's in control. And here's the part people overlook. Peace is a practice. Not a feeling, not a mood, a practice. You choose it over and over again, sometimes 100 times in a single day. You choose it when the phone rings with bad news. You choose it when the plan changes suddenly. You choose it when you can't see the next step. You choose it when your heart wants to panic. Every time you choose peace, you're training your spirit to stand still in the storm. This kind of peace doesn't come from pretending everything is fine. It comes from knowing that even if everything isn't fine, you will be. It comes from trusting that God is present not just at the finish line, but in the pressure, in the uncertainty, in the middle of the mess. Peace becomes a way of saying, God, I don't know how this will unfold, but I choose to rest in you anyway. That's where the magic happens. That's where you start to feel the weight lift, even though the circumstance hasn't shifted. There's something incredibly freeing about deciding that your inner world won't be held hostage by outer conditions. When you choose peace early in the thick of the chaos, you stop waiting for life to give you permission to breathe. You stop waiting for perfect timing. You stop letting circumstances dictate your sanity, and slowly you notice the storm hasn't stopped, but you're not breaking anymore. You're steady, you're centered, you're grounded in something unshakable. Peace is not the end of the storm, it's the strength that carries you through it. And when the storm finally passes, and it always does, you'll look back and realize the peace you chose is what held you together when everything else was pulling you apart. When everything around you is falling apart, your mind automatically locks onto the destruction. It's human nature. We stare at the pieces, the loss, the disappointment, the mess. We replay the moment things broke and obsess over how to fix what used to be. But faith does something completely different. Faith shifts your focus. It takes your eyes off the wreckage and points them toward what God is quietly building next. Faith doesn't pretend the broken pieces aren't there. It just refuses to let them be the only thing you see. It's easy to get stuck staring at what collapsed. You can get so focused on what ended that you miss what's beginning. You can get so tangled up in grief over what you lost that you overlook the ground clearing under your feet, making space for something stronger, wiser, and more aligned with who you're becoming. Faith steps in like a gentle hand on your chin, lifting your gaze off the ruins and nudging you to look forward. It whispers, "There's more ahead. Don't let what fell apart blind you to what's being rebuilt." This shift in focus doesn't happen automatically. It's a conscious decision, a daily choice to look beyond the immediate pain and ask, what is God doing with this? What is He shaping in me? What is He preparing for me? Sometimes the answer doesn't show up right away. Sometimes all you have is the choice to believe that there is a future worth walking toward. And that's where faith works its quiet miracle. Instead of staring at the closed door, you start noticing the hallway you never would have walked down otherwise. The collapse of something you cared about, whether it's a relationship, a job, a dream, or a season, can hold your eyes hostage if you're not careful. You end up sitting in the rubble, picking through memories, rewriting what ifs, digging for closure. But faith changes the direction of your energy. It takes what felt like an ending and reframes it as transition. It gives you permission to grieve what was, but still lean toward what will be. It doesn't erase the past, it frees you from being chained to it. And here's the thing, once your focus shifts, your spirit starts to shift too. Suddenly you find yourself noticing things you were too heartbroken to see before. New opportunities that weren't visible from the old vantage point. New people who walk into your life right when you need them. New strength in yourself that you never recognized. Faith turns your attention from the ashes to the blueprint. Because God doesn't just leave you with loss, He uses it as material for restoration. Over time, you start to realize that the thing that fell apart might have been blocking the thing being built. You see how the ending made room for the beginning. You notice that what God is crafting is better aligned, more purposeful, more sustainable. Faith helps you stop asking, why did this happen? And start asking, what is this preparing me for? And that single shift from backward to forward, from brokenness to becoming, is where healing truly begins. When faith redirects your focus, you stop living in the shadow of what collapsed and start living in the light of what's coming. And that's when you understand God wasn't just taking something away, He was making room to build something new. Some of the most powerful stories you'll ever carry, the ones that shake rooms, lift people up, and remind you of who God is, don't come from the seasons where everything went right. They come from the moments when you were stretched, shattered, pushed, tested, and left wondering how you were even still standing. Your greatest testimonies aren't born in the sunshine, they're forged in the fire. They grow in the dark places where you cried, wrestled, doubted, broke, and somehow still kept moving. Those moments, the ones you didn't think you'd survive, become the very stories that declare God's faithfulness louder than any victory ever could. We love the idea of strength, but we hate the process that produces it. We want the testimony without the test. But life doesn't work that way. Every great person of faith, every story that inspires you, every testimony that makes your heart swell, it's all rooted in struggle. Think about it. Nobody stands up and says, let me tell you about the time when everything was nice and easy. No, the testimonies that hit different come from the times when life was 2 seconds away from crushing you, but grace caught you instead. It's in the suffering that you learn endurance. It's in the uncertainty that you learn trust. It's in the heartbreak that you learn compassion. It's in the loss that you learn gratitude. These hard spaces stretch the soul, making room for wisdom you couldn't gain any other way. When you're going through it, it feels like punishment. But when you come out of it, you realize it was preparation. Preparation for the people you're meant to help, the battles you're meant to fight, and the purpose you're meant to walk in. The raw truth is this: people don't need polished perfection, they need real stories. They need to hear how you made it when everything said you wouldn't. They need to hear how God met you in the middle of your breaking point. Your testimony becomes a roadmap for someone else's survival. What broke you last year might be the very story that saved someone this year. What made you cry might be what makes somebody else believe. Your pain becomes purpose when you're willing to speak about it. And here's the wild, beautiful twist. God doesn't waste anything, not a tear, not a failure, not a heartbreak, not a misstep. He recycles your suffering into strength. He turns your wounds into wisdom. The very thing the enemy hoped would silence you ends up becoming the story you shout from the rooftops. The battle you thought was going to destroy you ends up birthing a testimony that carries weight, authority, and power. One day you'll look back at what almost broke you and realize it didn't break you at all. It built you. It shaped you into someone who can stand, someone who can speak life, someone who can testify with conviction. And when you tell your story, people won't just hear pain, they'll hear victory woven through every line. Because your greatest testimonies, the ones that echo through your life, will always rise out of your greatest trials. When life breaks you down, when the walls cave in, when the plans you trusted fail right in your hands, faith is not just a belief, it becomes your oxygen. It becomes the thing that holds you together while everything else is falling apart. And if you've heard anything today, hear this: collapse is not the end. It's the doorway. It's the start of something God is shaping, stretching, and strengthening inside you. You may be standing in the middle of pieces right now, but God is standing in the middle of purpose. You may see ruins, but He sees a foundation. You may feel like the storm won, but He sees the storm teaching you how to stand. Faith is not about pretending you're never shaken. It's about knowing you are never alone while you're shaken. And there will come a day, oh, I promise you, that you'll look back and realize that the breaking didn't bury you, it birthed you. The pain didn't paralyze you, it matured you. The storm didn't sink you, it strengthened you. What tried to take you out became the very thing that lifted your voice, sharpened your vision, and pushed you into the next chapter of your destiny. So walk out of here today, not defeated, not discouraged, not overwhelmed, but awake. Awake to the truth that faith still works. Awake to the power that's been placed in you. Awake to the understanding that God is building something beautiful out of everything that fell apart. And if you can hold on, if you can trust Him in the middle, praise Him in the pressure, and believe Him in the breaking, you're going to see the very thing that tried to destroy you become the testimony that defines you.